about when we had Billy on of Chris and Billy cried?
Billy's a
Yeah.
good guy. I remember him.
Billy's a great guy.
Yeah.
Guys, we are live, and everybody, thank you for joining us today. I know it's last minute. It just sprung upon us, the passing of Eddie Van Halen. As a fan, and I brought Chris Impellitteri as a guitarist, and of course, me and Perrin as fans who've been following the band since, I guess, we were young lads. And Perrin, why don't you start it off by reading Wolfgang, his son's Twitter tweet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a little over an hour ago, TMZ and others published what Wolfgang put out. So Wolfgang Van Halen tweeted, "I can't believe I'm having to write this, but my father, Edward Ludwig Van Halen,
Lads, and
has
Perrin,
lost
why don't
his
you
long
start it
and
off?
arduous battle with cancer this morning. He was the best father I could ever ask for. Every moment I've shared with him on and off stage was a gift. My heart is broken, and I don't think I'll ever fully recover from this loss. I love you so much, Pop."
Yeah, very, very.
That's Wolf.
Very.
I mean,
yeah, you
that
can't,
hits you on every level, right? That hits you, a son writing to his father, a musician writing to another musician that he shared the stage with, and then, a son's horrible duty of having to inform the world, a world that loved his father, that his father's unfortunately passed away. So it's just 2020, just when you think it can't get any worse. You can't travel where you want to travel. In some cases, you can't work. You can't enjoy music the way you once enjoyed music. You can't go to sporting events if you like sports. We lost Frankie Benali a couple of weeks ago. We lost Neil Peart earlier in the year. I'm sure, I'm blanking, but, there's other people we've lost as well. We lost Kobe Bryant earlier in the year, a sporting figure. And, Chris will speak much more eloquently than I will. But, I posted on my Facebook that if there's a more iconic, influential guitar player in, the latter part of the 20th century, especially coming out of the US, I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
He influenced a generation of guitar players.
Absolutely.
And Chris, I know in one of his posts kind of mentioned what a great composer he was. And I think that can't be overlooked either. So this is a massive, massive loss, not just to the world of heavy music, but to the world of popular music.
Yeah. Eddie Van Halen, born January 26, 1955, and of course, passing October 6 today. Born in Amsterdam, with his family came to America. Just so much music, and not only was he did he capture our hearts with music, but he captured us with the spirit of guitar playing, and that's why we brought Chris on. Chris, first time you heard Eddie Van Halen, what age? What was it? What was the experience like?
I think I was 11 years old. Gosh, I was probably in 6th or 7th grade. Hearing him play guitar for the first time was mind-boggling. As a musician, the first thing you think of is, how is he doing that?
Yeah.
He was doing the two-handed tapping thing. I had never seen that before. It wasn't only his soloing that affected me, where I was like, wow, what is he doing? It was his tone and the way he wrote riffs. It was euphoric.
Yeah, I think the tapping technique, he attributes it to Jimmy Page in Heartbreaker. I from an interview that I read a long time ago. But it was Eruption, right? Right,
Yeah.
Chris? It was Eruption. It's like, what on earth is this guy doing? Right? You had Randy Rhoads, which was neoclassical, but then you had Eddie Van Halen. And what would you describe his style?
Well, first of all, Edward was an innovator. So it's really difficult to say that he was a, classically trained or influenced guitar player. He just reminds me of a guy that the guitar was a tool that allowed him to express himself. And that's kind of how I have always approached the instrument. It's kind of a vehicle to allow me to express myself musically. And with Edward, he seemed to break all the barriers. There were no limits. So I would think how he would play, whether, when I first heard Eruption, we were actually trying to play, the arpeggio sequence all with our left hand. Tremendous stretch. So we're like, my God, how big is this guy's hands? Then when you realized, oh, he was doing this, you realize, it was like an epiphany, a whole new world of playing, opened up for all of us. But to kind of, I don't know, segment him or put him in a certain category, I don't think you can do that because there were really no barriers, right? Edward, the guitar was his voice, and so it wasn't is he a classical guitar player? Was he a jazz guitarist? I wouldn't say that. I mean, he was a human being that used the instrument to express himself. And obviously he did it far more in rock. But by far, in my humble opinion, I think he's probably going to turn out to be the most influential rock guitarist in history, even above Hendrix, who I love.
And that's what you told us right before. And Perrin, I want you to read out the tweets and from the stars and the artists and the famous people, what they're saying, as we're going through this.
Sure. And I'll say I've never seen anything like this. Even with Neil Peart passing away earlier in the year, like I literally, from every kind of heavy music, Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, country and western artists, rap artists, white artists, black artists, international artists. I've never seen so many tweets, Facebook posts so quickly after the passing of somebody. So Tony Iommi actually just posted. I mean, that's pretty high up the food chain in terms of guitar riff writers. So Tony literally just wrote, "I'm just devastated to hear the awful news of the passing of my dear friend, Eddie Van Halen. He fought a long and hard battle with his cancer right to the very end. Eddie was one of a very special kind of person, a really great friend, brilliant guitar player who was idolized by millions of fans, and a lovely human being. Maria and I send our deepest condolences to his wife, Janie, his son, Wolfgang, and his brother, Alex, and family, who have stood by him through all of this horrible illness, and of course, his fans. Rest in peace, my dear friend, till we meet again." And there's a great picture of Eddie and Tony Iommi together. Of course, Van Halen, came...
Well, it's a good segue here. This is a good segue. They're the famous Black Sabbath, blowing away Black Sabbath. There was something, and to Chris, this, as I was growing up, I was a little kid, something fun about them, the image, the style, but it was not only the guitar playing, but he was the Jimi Hendrix of our generation, right? Amongst with Randy Rhoads, but Randy Rhoads, his time was short. Eddie was this caricature in a way, right? And as a young kid, we looked up to him, and it was fun, and he was having a good time, and he was coming out with this amazing music. First time you heard the first album, what were your thoughts, Chris?
I thought, first of all, insane guitar playing. I want to be that guy. It really encouraged me to pick up my guitar and never put it down. I just love the way he played. For me, I was really into songs like "I'm the One." It was really for me, it was my first, first experience hearing what I thought really would become shred. He was doing all the really fast, cool stuff. So "I'm the One," the solo in "Ice Cream Man." And what you said earlier, Jimmy, is so true. Eddie had a positive energy that he conveyed, like just happiness, excitement. And I saw Van Halen multiple times in concert, and not only was Eddie great, but he had that same kind of conveyance is not the word, but he would convey that positive energy where when you saw them, you left feeling great. You felt you're just in a great mood. Yeah. And Eddie, I don't know, the smile, the image, whatever, they had it all.
Yeah. Well, the early Van Halen albums, I mean, you really hear it, right? They're technically incredible albums and not just a guitar playing, but they're fun, happy songs. And they're not songs just for the sake of let's put a guitar solo there or a great, drum piece there. Starting with that first album, every single one of those songs is just a great, great song with great soloing and great guitar work within it. And honestly, that's a game-changing debut record. I mean, think about debut records in popular music. You can probably count on one hand the number of debut records that are as influential as Van Halen 1. I mean, I would defy you to name more than 5 records.
Well,
Maybe the first Black Sabbath record, and
interesting thing, right? From Van Halen comes Gene Simmons, right? Sort of like nudging Eddie Van Halen, come on, join my band, at least so he says. Or, he created those first demos, he produced them, and he brought attention to the band. What if he would have joined Kiss? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it would have fit. I think they would have tried to push him down in terms of playing like they did with Vinnie Vincent. What do you think, Chris?
I doubt that would have worked. I mean, the magic of Van Halen were the contribution of 4 individual members. I mean, there was a chemistry, obviously, between Edward and Alex, but there was also a chemistry between Eddie and David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
I mean, David, there was a magic, a tonal characteristic about his voice that really complemented Edward's guitar playing and the music that they wrote together. So, him joining Kiss, I mean, I've heard that ridiculous rumor as well. I don't think he would have been able to shine the way he did in Van Halen. And, to kind of touch on Perrin's point, about the first Van Halen record, I think another reason why it was so magical, it's actually quite a heavy record, but it has a lot of melody, a lot of melodic content, which makes it palatable, not only for musicians, but for just the average music listener. You couple that, and then of course the image, this is where all of a sudden the girls join. Van Halen was just magical, and there weren't a lot of bands that could capture all of that, like the image, the playing, the chemistry.
Yeah. Were you there in the whiskey days when Van Halen was playing, on the Sunset Strip? Chris, were you there? Were you there?
A little bit before my time. Of course, when I came to California, I literally moved to California because this was the place where Van Halen made it. And look, I know this is going to sound foolish, not to go into my personal life story,
no, it's all good.
But you guys know when I was a kid, I lost my parents.
Yeah.
So I really only had a guitar at 9 years old, right? And I was encouraged to take lessons. And in many ways, and as creepy and as weird as it sounds, I used to pretend like Eddie and Alex were my older brothers, so really it was their music was a huge inspiration for me to create the band Impellitteri and the music and the way I play guitar. I mean, a lot of that, I think really was built off their foundation.
Yeah. Perrin, give me another tribute, another tweet.
You know what? There's been a really good tribute by, someone outside the metal world, but certainly an important figure in the guitar world. So Adrian Baloo. So I don't know who's familiar with Adrian Baloo, but he played with Frank Zappa and David Bowie. And he kind of mentioned a lot of the things that we were just talking about. So from Adrian Baloo, very sad to hear of the passing of the great guitarist Eddie Van Halen. When I was still rehearsing with Frank Zappa in 1977, Rob Fetters came out to Hollywood. We walked Sunset Boulevard for hours, talking about life, and finally popped into the Whiskey A Go-Go. There was a cool band with a great guitarist playing. Both Rob and I had recently been playing guitar using our right hand index finger on the neck, later called tapping. We were astounded to see the guitarist was using the same technique. We thought we were the only ones doing it. We looked at each other and said, he's doing the same thing we're doing. Then we listened some more and said, and he's doing it better.
Yeah.
And of course, the band was Van Halen.
Yeah, incredible.
So that's Adrian Baloo, formerly of Adrian Baloo and the Bears and the David Bowie Band and Frank Zappa. So again,
all right,
high praise from the guitar world.
That's a great, actually, that was pretty good. My first time I saw Van Halen, I was 14 years old. I think it was 14. And it was on the Diver Down tour, right? And oh my Lord, it's just, and I think all the guys started growing their hair long because of Van Halen at the time. He was this sort of like long hair perm, because they were the first hair metal band, right? They were the first really big hair metal band. I remember the Us Festival, the shenanigans over there, and they were like a force to be reckoned with. And I'm talking about the David Lee Roth era here.
We'll get to Sammy in a second. Hey, and he got the girl next door though, right? He got Valerie Bertinelli, One Day at a Time.
One Day at a Time.
Not only could Eddie smoke on the guitar, but he got the America's Darling, the girl next door, to marry.
That's a really good point too. That's a great point. And it kind of everybody enjoyed seeing Eddie smiling and Valerie Bertinelli. It kind of looked alike.
It's like Americana, in a way, right? Like honestly, it's like a piece of Americana when you think about it. The bad boy guitar player got the wholesome girl next door. And
all right, here we go. So here at Van Halen 2. Thoughts, Chris? Van Halen too. Everybody else thoughts in the world, Van Halen too.
Well,
Look at these
that's my
guys. These
favorite,
guys
if I'm
are on
honest.
fire. Look at these guys. You've never seen something like. Why is this guy jumping so high? Look at his fires in the drum sets and wow.
yeah. You know, look, Van Halen 2, I thought was a perfect compliment to follow Van Halen 1 because it didn't duplicate the record verbatim. I mean, it basically took a new course. I mean, songs like Dance the Night Away, what a great pop rock song that was. Then Edward really took the guitar even further with the Spanish Fly instrumental.
Yeah.
If you listen to Spanish Fly,
Yes.
a lot of the fast stuff he's doing is actually the technique I actually kind of ripped from him, meaning I took it from him. And a lot of times people think I'm doing all this alternate picking, and a lot of times I'm not. I'm actually doing what Eddie did verbatim in Spanish Fly. So as a musician, he took the instrument, he continued to grow, right? It wasn't just, hey, I'm replicating Van Halen 1. He took us in yet a new direction.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I was talking with Chris Holmes about Eddie Van Halen, you know, from Wasp, ex-member of Wasp. You know, he grew up with Eddie. And look, I'm not going to speak on his behalf. He's a great, I love Chris. He grew up in Pasadena with Eddie, and he has so many great stories. And I tried to reach him to come on, but I think he's really affected by this, and I'm not going to push anybody to go on who's, you know, really hurt by it and touched by it. I just wanted to sort of mention that. What else do we have, Perrin?
From the world of country music, Kenny Chesney. So Kenny Chesney.
Who are you
music,
finding?
They're, honestly, you cannot pick up your phone and not see a tribute to Eddie Van Halen.
All right. Okay.
It's just a matter of which one you want to read. And I think, you know, like, it's interesting I really want to hit home the influence that Eddie Van Halen had on the world outside of hard rock and heavy metal.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you could be a self-respecting guitar player or musician and not have respect for Eddie's body of work. Okay. So Kenny Chesney from the country music world. I am devastated at the news of the passing of my friend Eddie Van Halen. He was a friend and a hero to anyone who has ever picked up a guitar and had a dream. Eddie and his brother Alex joined us on stage at one of our stadium shows in Los Angeles, and it was one of the highlights of my touring life and all of my summers on the road. I will never forget that night and how happy we both were that our musical paths crossed that night on stage. Rest in peace to the best guitar player that ever lived. We will miss you, Eddie Van Halen. Your music will live forever. Right. And it will live forever. Yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting thing to say is that, you know, once, you know, Jimmy, maybe you and I will be doing this show in a nursing home, who knows? But, you know, 50 years from now, you know, if Ain't Talking About Love or Jump or Why Can't This Be Love or any number of songs that Eddie, you know, wrote, will still be on the radio. As long as there's FM radio or satellite radio, I think these songs, Panama, you name them, you know, these songs will always be there. If we left a time capsule for the next generation to understand what rock music was in the 20th century, you know, you can probably put a couple of Van Halen records into that time capsule and people would understand what rock guitar was in the 20th century.
Has David Lee Roth said anything yet?
I haven't seen anything from David, but I mean, you know, that's probably the one that everyone is waiting on, I would think. Sammy Hagar made a brief statement, and it's just a picture, a very nice picture of him and Eddie on an airplane, and just he's saying he's heartbroken and speechless. My love to the family. So you'd think that maybe more will come later, but you know, I'm wondering. So I mean, Chris, being in the Southern California area, you know, there were hints for a lot of years that maybe something was up. You know, Eddie had been battling throat or tongue cancer even in the early 2000s. And then the band reunited and played a couple of different tours of David Lee Roth and even one of Sammy Hagar. And then it was kind of quiet. And over the last few years, there were rumors that Eddie was having health issues again. You know, David Lee Roth had said, yeah, we're probably shutting it down now. It's over. And then you'd have an Eddie sighting and everyone would think things were okay. And then there was rumors he was flying to Germany for experiential treatments. So Chris, on the scene in Southern California, like was it a known thing that he was this sick, or was it out there?
Gossip. I mean, you know, look, I whether I'm at all, because, you know, when we're rehearsing, we're usually at the major rehearsal places. And, you know, you have your road crew guys that were probably working for Van Halen or part of their inner circle. So you'd certainly hear people talking, you know, friendly banter, but gossip. You know, I really tried not to participate in that because I wasn't part of the inner circle. It just wasn't my place. So if I did hear stuff, which I would occasionally, I just would feel really uncomfortable to kind of further that rumor or whatever. But yeah, I mean, people were concerned, right? And again, we were concerned out of love, out of appreciation, you know, for someone, we didn't want to lose someone like this.
Yeah, it's certainly not from a tabloid standpoint, but I think, you know, again, like, I'm shocked personally. I mean, I guess if I stop and think about it, I'm not shocked because there had been speculation he was sick, but I'm kind of just shocked that it's 65 years of age and this feels like it came out of nowhere almost, you know, just, you know, certainly not news I was expecting to hear today.
Chris, what was the first concert you saw of Van Halen?
The first time I saw them?
Yeah, first time you saw them live.
I think it was 1981. So I missed the first two tours mainly because I was too young, but I think it was 1981. I think it was at the Hartford Civic Center in Connecticut. And it was just as you could imagine. Eddie just, I mean, he was insanely talented. He was energetic, happy. David Lee Roth was, you know, charismatic. They had I don't know how big the arena was, 12,000 people. Everybody was standing on their seats, you know, not just standing up, but standing on their seats. Everybody wanted to be part of this band. That was the first time I saw them. I'd seen them a few other times, and, you know, every time Eddie delivered. I mean, I was just blown away.
Yeah. Guitar World, and here's another good one. Guitar World magazine readers poll, I guess he was the #1 guitarist in Guitar World magazine on their poll of 100 greatest guitarists of all time, and well deserved. There's always, and I'm going to throw this out at you, Chris, there's always this sort of rivalry with Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen, especially back in 1981, 1980. Starting off, I know the two bands played together once. They knew each other, they knew of each other, but they never were really friends, Eddie and Randy Rhoads. Did you prefer one or the other?
Well, I saw both of them. They were both probably my #1 and #2 influence.
Yeah.
Randy took, at least when I was, when the first time I heard Randy, I realized, wow, he was really deeply classically rooted with his playing and his composition, right? Where Edward was more not mainstream rock, but more traditional rock music, where he was using more the techniques that were just, we hadn't heard this before. Randy was utilizing harmonic minor scales, melodic minor. So from a classical perspective, or just being trained classically, we had already heard that. That wasn't something new to us. The way Van Halen played, it was something new. It was very unique. It was like, how's he doing that? With Randy, and Randy was great. I mean, I love Randy, but we kind of understood from a theoretical perspective, like music theory, what he was doing, if that makes sense. So if I were to compare the two, you know, Eddie was just, he was so unpredictable, and he was so, he was just an innovative player where it took us quite a bit of time to sit down and figure out what he was doing. Remember, we didn't have YouTube. There weren't videos. We had to learn by ear.
You had to actually put the record player back, like the needle, right? You had to keep putting it back. Oh,
yeah,
boy,
yeah.
That's painful. Yes.
There's a great Neil Schon story about the first time he heard Eruption. And I remember reading an article, and he was talking about how he had to sit there and learn for hours trying to figure out what Eddie was doing. And it wasn't until he finally saw Eddie play, he realized, oh, he's using the right hand.
It makes a difference, YouTube. YouTube makes a huge difference. You can see them play it, and you could just sort of slow it down, and it's a lot easier to understand.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Perrin, what else you got?
Well, we got Joe Bonamassa, who I think, you know, is probably such a respected guitar player right now. I mean, we just interviewed Derek Sherinian not long ago, and Joe was on Derek's album, and Joe's been just probably, in terms of blues players, he's probably one of the more popular guys right now and better people. So Joe Bonamassa, this hurts to even have to write this, but here it goes. Words cannot describe how monumental the loss of Edward Van Halen is to both the music community and to me personally. Edward inspired generations of guitar players of all genres, including a young blues guitar player named Joe Bonamassa. His playing was unrivaled in its ingenuity and its ferocity. He was a gentleman the few times I was lucky enough to meet him. Rest in peace to the greatest rock guitarist of all time. Everyone who has ever looked at an electric guitar is heartbroken today.
Yeah, yeah. All right, this is what I want to do next. I want everybody, look, there's like tons of people writing messages right now. Just tell me your favorite Eddie Van Halen song. It could be from any era. It could be from Iager to David Lee Roth. To me, it's Mean Street. Right? I mean, there's nothing that sort of that opening sort of guitar solo-ish. Just call it a guitar solo. What do you call it, Chris? It's sort of like,
well, again, innovation, tapping,
right?
He was almost playing the way funk bass players played.
And then the riff, just to go into the song, and then of course when David Lee Roth comes in, it's just an explosion. So everybody out there, oh, here's one. Marcello says "Beat It" by Michael Jackson. And let me tell you something: Jump, Mean Street, Swingers Swing. But let me just go Panama. Everybody's like, Eruption, of course, duh. Michael Jackson's "Beat It." Let me tell you, air guitars were going off everywhere on a Michael Jackson song. You guys remember that?
Yes.
That wasn't, what a song, like, it's coming out of nowhere. Like, here you have this sort of like dance song, and then suddenly like Eddie Van Halen's just popping out there with, an incredible solo. All right, Perrin, give me your favorite song. I'm going to read everybody else's.
I can give you a lot, but I'll give you one. Beautiful Girls.
Beautiful Girls.
I just love that opening riff, the Beautiful Girls. And I love happy toe tapping Van Halen. I love, melodic Van Halen. So, Chris mentioned Dance the Night Away before, and I'll name check Beautiful Girls. That's the kind of like summer top down, great riff, good time music. So Beautiful Girls, I think, is one that does it for me.
Metal Ben says Atomic Punk. Now, what a song. There's an incredible, what on earth is he doing there? All right, Chris, tell me your favorite track.
That's fine.
There's gotta be one.
I'm the one.
I'm the one you love.
Yeah, I'm the one. I mean, it's just on the first record. Eddie's on fire. To me, that's like the pinnacle of his playing. I mean, he's got the great riff. The solo is fantastic. I mean, I spent hours learning the solo, the tone, right? And then, of course, the synergy, right? And the camaraderie of those four individual human beings coming together, and their chemistry unites, and magic.
Dirty Movies and Romeo Delight. Everybody wants some.
It's endless. That's why I said what I said about the time capsule.
I remember everybody. Yeah. Oh, everybody wants.
How about
some.
"In the Cradle Will Rock"?
Oh, yeah. Jesus! But is that a keyboard or is that a guitar? That how it starts?
Primarily, it's a keyboard. It's actually.
I'm changing my answer, Jimmy, because I just remembered.
He runs that through a flanger into a Marshall.
Okay,
Jimmy, I'm changing my answer. How could I not remember Unchained? Unchained. Show with it. The hair on the back of my neck stand up.
Yes.
I mean,
pound cake.
Yeah. Hey guys, now this is important for all of you metal fans. So Unchained, I don't know how many of you guitar players out there understand this. I'm sure you do. But actually, it's drop D, where he basically tunes the sixth string, the low E, down to a D, right? Although they tuned a half step below, so probably C sharp.
No?
And that is kind of like was my first experience detuning. Right. And realizing, the guitar becomes much heavier when you do the drop D. And that's kind of where we kind of evolved into the metal guys in the 90s.
I want to talk about this. And that's exactly the point. In the 90s, it was all drop D tuning. But Eddie Van Halen was dropped. It was because of David's voice, right? I mean, just to fit in a little more comfortable in what he was playing. And the strings are looser, but it's a lot more darker sound. Correct, Chris?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it's for one, if you have a limited vocal range, tuning down a half step is certainly helpful, especially live. But it also gives the band a deeper or fuller sound.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But and this is a great point, because where everybody was sort of like, 440, the standard tuning, Van Halen comes in. Well, man, with the exception of Black Sabbath, right? They had a lot of the drop C tuning. I don't know what they were doing there. They were really going low because of Tony's fingers, right? He had to really loosen the strings. With the exception of Black Sabbath, Van Halen was creating these sort of rock songs in a lower tuning, and then the whole 90s was a drop D tuning.
Well, actually, in the '90s, they go down to A sharp. I mean, when you get the bands like Korn, it's now
Just
we're
like
really
one
down.
finger just
Well, it's basically that. But either way, Unchained was really the first time I heard drop tuning used, especially in rock music. And the first time we played that riff cranked through our Marshalls, it was euphoric. It was like, oh my God, this is huge sounding.
All right, everybody.
So, and again,
yes. On Fire, there's another song. I'm just reading out the songs. They're just coming in too fast. All right, Perrin, what else we got in the feeds? The tributes.
Mike Portnoy from Dream Theaters has chimed in.
Okay.
I'm in complete and utter shock over the news of Edward Van Halen's passing. Very few musicians ever come along that change the entire landscape or the instrument.
I think that's the key right there, the landscape. Go ahead.
And King Edward is one of those few. One of the greatest of all time. My deepest condolences to Wolf Van Halen, Alex, and the entire family.
Yeah.
So again, every tweet and every Facebook post really seems to be, that influence, the game changing of the landscape. Again, innovation and influence seem to be the buzzwords. So speaking of that, I'm curious to get Chris's thoughts and Jimmy's and everyone's thoughts. So, Eddie takes the guitar almost to like heights that no one had seen in the 80s. And then in early 1984, we get this keyboard riff that is going to be burned in everyone's heads for the rest of our lives, I think. And that's the intro to Jump. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on the guitar player of all guitar players?
There it is.
Coming up with this incredibly iconic keyboard riff that is like a phone ringtone that is just, again, as soon as you hear it, you know what it is. So maybe talk a bit about the 1984 album and how that changed the game.
You know what the headline in Hit Parade or Circus was? Move over, Geddy. Here comes Eddie. Because Geddy Lee was the keyboard player, bringing keyboards into Rush. So move over, Geddy. Here comes Eddie. So tell us about, piano was his first instrument. He wanted to bring in the keyboards a lot sooner than he did on 1984, according to the historians, right? And according to Eddie and David Lee Roth. So yes, tell us about the keyboard factor, Chris. What'd you think about that?
Well, first of all, we could argue that it starts with "And the Cradle Will Rock," right? That's the first time we really hear the keyboard used. Then if you think about, you remember the cover they did, Dancing in the Streets on Diver Down?
Yeah, a lot of pop.
What an incredible riff that is. It is, it's so cool. It reminds me of something a guitar player would write on a keyboard. And then obviously in 1984, keyboards become much more dominant, and his riffs, the song structure, his writing, it just shows you how he evolves as a musician and a songwriter. That's probably the genius of Eddie Van Halen. Look, there are guys like me, I guess some people think we're great soloists or whatever, but at times I can feel like, we're lacking something. And what we're lacking is what Edward had. Not only could he play all the really technical, all the technical stuff, but he could write great songs, even a pop song.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he could do that as good as the best people out there.
It was brave. I really thought that was so brave because, that Jump and 1984 could have alienated a lot of hardcore fans. But it was so good, you couldn't deny how great it was. It's like, I deny you, no one could kind of deny how catchy, you were hooked right from that intro.
Well, remember though,
sometimes is there's genius in simplicity, right? And I don't want to say that opening riff, the Jump, is simple, but it's not like a neoclassical piece, but it's really it's simple yet genius at the same time, and it's just, again, we'll all remember it till the end of time. I think brave. It was brave to do it. And then you talk about pop, Jimmy. I know you're not a huge fan of the Sammy years.
No, I'm not.
But if you would, I would have to say on the Sammy side, Why Can't This Be Love is such a great pop song. And
Perrin, I'm going to shock everybody right now, as much as I'm not a Sammy fan at all. That
you own it. You can't not own it. That's why you can't not own it. And that album with Sammy Hagar, Best of Both Worlds, 5150, Dreams, and like I said, I think Why Can't This Be Love is such like a bouncy, fun pop
Why Can't This Be Love is a great album.
You
Song,
know,
I mean, yeah.
so I know the Sammy era of Van Halen is not everyone's cup of tea, but you can't deny that a lot of great work came out of that era as well. You know, right now, I mean, what a brilliant composition that is. You know,
Okay, all right. Let's settle this. Okay, I really don't like Sammy Hagar's era. I like Sammy Hagar as a person. I like him doing other stuff, but I don't like him with Van Halen. I said it. Chris, do you prefer Eddie? And I'm talking about Eddie now. Do you prefer his playing in the Sammy Hagar era or the David Lee Roth era, or you just like both?
Well, of course, I like his playing in the David Lee Roth era because it was more guitar driven, right? With Sammy, you know what it reminds me of? Here's a good way to put this because I know Eddie used to talk about Beethoven being an influence. It reminds me of kind of like Eddie is more like Paganini or Mozart with David Lee Roth, especially on the first couple of records. And then with Sammy, he becomes more like a Beethoven where he's just a great composer, right? And I'm with you. I mean, David was definitely, I was more keen to love the David years than the Sammy years. And again, don't get me wrong, I love Sammy, but there was just, again, it was chemistry between Edward and David that really touched me.
I agree. You know what it was? It was dangerous. David Lee Roth and
Yeah.
Eddie Van Halen was just a dangerous, like you could see they're both type A personalities, and it's something's going to explode. There was danger there. With Sammy, it was kind of like everything's fitting in nicely. And again, I emphasize, I do like Sammy's voice, and I do like, the macho stuff and stuff he's done afterwards, a chicken foot. I thought that the sound of Van Halen changed once Sammy was there. It wasn't as dangerous anymore. I didn't, you don't, there was something electrical about the David Lee Roth era, and that came out in the playing of Eddie Van Halen, like Mean Street. That's a perfect example. You'll never get a song like that with Sammy Hagar. Perrin, weigh in with your Hagar.
no, I mean, again, I want today to more. I think we should be celebrating the breadth of Edward Van Halen's work.
Agreed. I'm not gonna. I
And
know I always
I
change this into a David Lee Roth Sammy thing, but
today isn't a day I think to compare eras because we're all
agreed.
going to.
All right. I'll stop.
But I think it demonstrates the man's talent to be able to transition from the David years to the Sammy years. And Jimmy, don't explode, but there's even the Gary Sharon years in there. Don't go nuts on me. But again,
I won't go there. I'll remain calm because today is a day that we celebrate his music.
Well, let's just say you rarely see a band be as successful as Van Halen was after a major lead singer change. And for Van Halen to have the success they did, both with David and then with Sammy, I think is a credit to actually the Van Halen brothers and Mike Anthony as well, because they did something that is not easy to do and has rarely been done. Again, talking about counting on one hand, you can probably count on one hand the amount of major bands that successfully navigated a lead singer change and even a bit of a change in style, but still came out on the other end of it, commercially successful and with the respect of fans and peers.
Yeah.
So, I love the David era, but I like and I respect the Sammy era. And there's a few toe tappers that came out of that era, I would say. And, but.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, there is some good songs. I mean, I wouldn't have bought this. I mean, otherwise, right? I think this is a great album. This is probably my favorite Sammy album right here. Sammy era album with Eddie Van Halen. And Why Can't This Be Love is another, there's a lot of great keyboard, a lot of piano, and we shouldn't forget, he was a composer, he was a guitarist, and he was a keyboardist, right? Right, Chris?
He played bass. He did it all. Hey, can I interject for one thing? Because, today, obviously, it's a really sad day. And it's a sad day, not only because we as fans, right, of Van Halen, the band, and Edward, lost someone that really touched us, right? Touched us emotionally. But at the same time, and I think I said this about Neil Peart, we really need to celebrate Eddie's life. I mean, think about what he accomplished, for God's sakes. I mean, one, he turns out to be one of the greatest rock guitarists in the history, right, of music. That's one thing. So that's going to be part of his legacy. Turns out to be this amazing composer, another part of this. everybody that I've ever talked to that knew Edward said he was genuinely a great human being, right? Great father. His family loved him. So, I think about all of the things he accomplished. I mean, look, if we could accomplish 1/10 of what he did, we all should be so lucky, you know. And if you look at his success, I mean, what's the old saying? And I hate doing this, but it's true. It's like, the guys want to be him, the girls want to be with him.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody, including movie stars, wanted to hang out with Eddie Van Halen. So
there's a pop culture element to him. Yes, there's a pop culture element.
He had it all. So I look at his life at this point. I'm just celebrating his life. I know musically he touched me, and I'm sure going on in the future, when I sit down today, playing, recording, whatever, Eddie is going to have some sort of influence on me. No matter what I do, he's always in the back of my mind. Like, hey, how would Eddie play this solo? Or how would he write this hook? What would he make the amp sound like?
Yeah, and that's, it was sound, wasn't it? It was not only technique, but it was sound. He took the guitar apart.
Huge.
He took the guitar apart. I remember watching him on Saturday Night Live when Valerie Bertinelli was the guest, right? And he would, he'd come on smiling, playing with the band. And that's what I loved about Eddie. The happiness, the joy of playing music, even though I guess, there was this alcohol element later on, but there was this joy of his love for music. And that's what I remember, that smile.
But wasn't he a real person as well? Like you said, Jimmy, he battled his demons with alcohol, and, he just came across as a very real person. He loved hard, he lived hard, he loved cars, he battled alcohol, he got over it, he wrote great music. It's just, it's a lot of tenacity there. You hear the tenacity in the guitar playing, and it sounds like in life he was equally tenacious. And even the brave move when they got back together to bring his son into the band. And, it kind of makes more sense now. And, it has been said that the Van Halen reunion in the latter days, while people felt bad that Michael Anthony wasn't part of it, I know Valerie Bertinelli was quoted as saying, look, if Wolfie wasn't playing with them right now, there wouldn't be a reunion because he really wants the opportunity to play with his son.
And that's cool. Yeah.
And how incredible. I was at those reunion shows to see Alex Van Halen, Edward Van Halen, and Wolfgang Van Halen on stage together. And I remember when David Lee Roth introduced the band, David said, what did he say? He said,
something old, something new.
No, he said 3/4 original, 1/4 inevitable, and I guess that's pretty true. But, so in retrospect, I guess it's a nice thing that Wolfie got to play as part of Van Halen with his father and his uncle. That's kind of a great kind of memory, and it kind of makes more sense now in retrospect if kind of Edward knew that ultimately he could meet his demise due to cancer.
We're too young to remember Jimi Hendrix, but the effect that Jimi Hendrix had on, let's say, the generation before us is the same effect that Eddie Van Halen had on our generation and the generations after that. But I think it was more our generation because we kind of grew up with the Panama and the music videos and Van Halen, and there's been a lot of silence in Van Halen as of lately, right? Because he was sick, right? And I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just saying it what it is. But he was our Jimi Hendrix, and that's what sort of like hurts me the most, and it's sad because our heroes are all fading away, right?
Well, it reminds us that we're getting older, right? And death's inevitable.
Yeah. It's been a tough year. We knew this was coming. Lee Kerslake died. Lou Kuvaris died. Remind me, Perrin, who else? They're just one after the other.
Frankie Banali just a couple of weeks ago.
Frankie Banali died. There's more. There's Pete Way.
Yeah, of course. It's been a really rough year and a half or so if you're a UFO fan, that's for sure. Pete Way, Paul Raymond, and Paul Chapman over the last couple of years. It's just, I don't know. I'm blanking right now, but
yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's a lot right there, and the sad thing is, I don't want to get everybody on a downer here, but it's just going to keep happening, right? Because we are getting older, like Chris said. But I think everybody just keep writing your favorite song by Eddie Van Halen, because his music. What's his legacy, Chris? Tell me his legacy. Like 50 years from now, are people still going to be saying, wow, man, Eddie Van Halen, this guy just did wonders to guitarists and guitar playing, I mean, and to music? Are people going to be looking at Eddie Van Halen like they're looking at John Lennon or Jimi Hendrix? Is he at the
I think so,
legendary
yeah.
status?
Absolutely. How could he not be put in with those? I mean, look, Hendrix could be like the forefather of the guitar hero, but Edward took the guitar farther, quite a bit farther than Hendrix was able to do, because of his technical ability and his knowledge. So yeah, I think that 50 years from now, I would assume that Edward will be revered just like Jimi Hendrix is or has been, over the last 30 or 40 years. People are going to still revere Edward in that similar manner, similar light. And yes, he'll be up there with the John Lennons, the Paul McCartneys. I mean, tell me another guitar player in our generation that went as far as Edward Van Halen with the instrument or had the success he had. I don't think I can name any.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess on that note, I mean, Perrin, do you have any other texts before we close off from, or tweets?
No,
or
I'll just
posts?
encourage everyone. I mean, if somehow you didn't know that much about Eddie Van Halen, just open your phone and you'll see people from all walks of life and all kinds of music commenting. And I mean, that's how you know, right? Every person I went to high school with, whether they were a rocker or a preppy person or, a non-music person, they're all commenting. And then there's comments from guys from Black Sabbath, from Kiss, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, Lenny Kravitz, Kenny Chesney, Adrian Baloo, basically any, again, I was trying to just demonstrate the breadth of his influence, because from every corner of music, people are commenting on how they were touched or influenced by Eddie Van Halen. So,
yeah,
measure of a man is how many lives he touched. He certainly touched a hell of a lot of lives.
And this is to both your points. I go to my wife, Eddie Van Halen died. I just before we started this, she goes, "What?" Even our wives know who Eddie Van Halen was. Even our parents know who Eddie Van Halen was. My mom's probably going to call me later on. She doesn't even listen to music. She's going to say, "Oh, Eddie Van Halen died." Like he's in the masses on a global scale, multi-generations, because of his guitar playing and the music and his persona, right, in the world. So there you have it, folks. Any last words there, Perrin?
Well, thanks for putting this together on short notice, Jimmy. Big thank you to Chris. Chris, Jimmy and I were talking that we got to get a guitar player on to kind of talk about the influence of Eddie Van Halen, and no one better than you to kind of really, who has a fan, but also as a great player and someone who Eddie touched. So thank you for joining us, Chris. I think you added so much to the conversation, and I know the Metal Voice audience loved hearing what you had to say.
Chris, closing remarks. What do you want to say?
Well, I'd say today we lost a legend, but we didn't lose his music. We have so much live footage that we can watch on YouTube, on, streaming. So as sad of a day it is, we still have something that he left us with, which was his gift, and it's his music.
Yeah. So everybody, I'm just going to grab the album here. The famous Van Halen logo. Here it is. Everybody crank it up. There
Crank your favorite loud.
Crank it up. It appeals to the metalheads. It appeals to the hard rockers. It appeals to the girls. There's mass appeal when it comes to Eddie Van Halen and his music with Van Halen. So everybody, I know there's like a comment a second happening right now. I can't get them. Just tell us your favorite album, your favorite song. Tell us what you want to say about Eddie Van Halen. I know he can't read it, but the world can. So thank you, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful night, and rest in peace,